Hello everybody and welcome. My name is Mandy VanHavermaet and I am an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up from Gray Eagle, Minnesota. And I am here today to share with you a couple of alternate cards using the Paper Pumpkin kit, the October 22 Paper Pumpkin kit called Ho Ho Ho. I've put on my Christmas music and I've been playing Christmas this morning and I've been loving it. And if you've talked to me at all ever, you know that the holiday Paper Pumpkin kits, in my opinion, are the best ones of the year. Absolutely love them. And I don't think you can go wrong with any of the cards that were designed by Stampin' Up this time. I haven't cut up any of them. I plan on making all of them just like that. However, the stamp set that they sent with is phenomenal. I am so very excited to play with the stamp set and show you a couple of ideas using just a couple of the stamps. I'm still playing. So just to give you a heads up, there's probably going to be more videos. Also want to mention before I keep moving on, there is some additional add-ons, some paper, they're like paper sacks, and I can't find that. There we go. It's on the back of this. I knew I had it. North Pole add-ons, little paper bags basically to go with this kit and next month's kit. If you would like to order them, you have to be a Paper Pumpkin subscriber to get those, but you can most definitely go onto my store, and I'll put a link into that comment if you are a Paper Pumpkin subscriber that you can get those add-on, the North Pole sacks add-on to coordinate with this month's Paper Pumpkin. Okay, let's get stamping. You know, the first thing I'm going to do when I get a Paper Pumpkin and they have some really cool paper print or some really cool designer series paper printed on those envelopes, I'm going to cut them apart. So I saved one so I could show you how to cut it apart. I am going to, an envelope measures, somewhere here is there it is. An envelope measures 5 3/4 inches. So I'm going to take an 1/8 inch off of each edge to start with. So I'm going to line up the bottom edge of the envelope, and then I'm going to flip it over, get that out of there, flip it over and line it up to 5 1/2 over here. So I'm just going to take another 1/8 inch off. These two pieces are garbage. You really can't save those for anything. Pull my garbage can up here. And now you're left with this. They've printed the entire inside. So I'm going to just line this up and trim it off right at the edge. So I'm making sure that this point there is right inside the track. That is also garbage. And then I'm going to get rid of this seal because I don't want it sticking on anything. So now I've got a nice big piece of designer series paper. I'm going to use one piece of that on my card. So it's actually going to be this piece. So now this should be 5 1/2 inches. Okay, so that's the length of a card base. So I'm going to cut that at 2 inches. And I'm going to use that on my first card. Now I've got a lot of designer series paper here that I will use on future projects. Okay, so now that that's all out of the way, all that cutting, the rest for this next card is going to be a piece of Shaded Spruce card base, 8 1/2 by 5 1/2, scored down the center at 4 1/4. Go ahead and fold and burnish that. Okay, and we're also going to use a tag from the Tailor-Made Tags die set. And that is the biggest one, I believe. I've got a piece of white scrap here. I'm also going to tell you I fussy cut out one of those snowmen. And I will show you how I colored him later on. I've got another card coming, my next card. But I just went ahead and stamped him and colored him and cut him out, fussy cut him out. That Santa Claus is so easy to fussy cut out. And I also have here somewhere I made a pile of stuff to make my video, and now I'm all messed up. I can't find my glitter paper. Well, isn't this embarrassing, as my son would say. Here it is. I'm going to show you how. I've got a piece of glimmer paper, and I've got it, it's 5.5 long. But this is how I conserve my glitter paper. I'm going to show you a bunch of tricks this time. I really like that glimmer paper, but it, number one, is a little hard to work with, to use a lot of it, and you want to stretch it because there's not a lot there. So let's start putting our card together. I'm just going to put some adhesive on the back of my piece of designer series paper, and I'm going to put it in a little bit. And this does have like the bumps. You can feel them, but you can't see them from the inside of the card, like where the flap down. Now I'm going to bring in my little mandolin cutter, and if you don't have a little mandolin, they are phenomenal. This was a few years ago for a promotion that Stampin' Up had, that I was able to get this one. But if you don't have a little mandolin, you should, because they're great. Okay, so now I'm just going to, and the reason I like mandolin cutters versus the trimmer with glimmer paper is because glitter paper does dull your blades. So I'm just cutting off little strips, 1/8 inch. And if you have a bigger piece of glimmer paper, it's going to be a lot easier, I promise. But I'm down to this much. So I've got, it's 5.5. So it's the length of my card base, but I've just got 2 1/8 inch strips there now. Okay. So what I'm going to do to adhere those down is take some Tombow glue and run it just a little fine bead along the edge of my designer series paper, my envelope paper. And this helps that my glue is almost gone, so it really puts a really fine bead. And then I'm just going to set my pieces of glimmer paper right along the edge of that designer series paper. And so it gives the illusion that you've matted it on top of the glimmer paper, but you haven't. It's a great way to conserve your glimmer paper and your glitter paper and your foils and things like that. Also makes it so it's not quite so heavy when mailing it. So go ahead and just let those sit for just a minute. We're going to trim those bottom pieces off. They get a little longer. All right. So I've told you I've fussy cut him out, and he is colored in Cherry Cobbler his hat, and then Petal Pink for his skin, and a little bit of Flirty Flamingo for his nose and his cheeks. I'm going to use my Cherry Cobbler ink pad, and I still have the old style ink pad, but it's working just fine for me, so I'm going to keep on using it. And I've got the stamp that says Mary right here, and I've got the snowflake stamp and the Christmas stamp. So I'm going to take, and I'm just going to eyeball it. This is how I'm going to have my tag sitting on here, but I don't want to stamp it while it's on here because it's going to make it kind of, this is a pretty solid stamp, so it's going to mess with the way that my image goes on. But I'm just kind of thinking about where I want it, right about in there, okay? So I'm going to bring this in, my Stampin' Pierce mat, because it is such a nice solid image. I want to make sure that I get a good crisp impression. So just hold it there for just a second. All right, perfect. Okay, and that is all I'm going to do with the Cherry Cobbler ink for right now. I'm going to open up my Shaded Spruce. I'm going to do a couple of different things. First off, I'm going to put some snowflakes in the background. And I probably should have done this before I put my strip of paper here down. Whoopsie. See if we can get that. Beautiful. But it's okay, because nobody knows that we thought we should have done that, right? That's the beauty of paper crafting. So Now that those have set for just a minute, I'm going to snip them off. Snip those little tips off. He flew right into my ink pad. Let's get that out of there. Okay, so now that will set right there, just like that. But we need to doctor that up a little bit, right? We need to do a little bit more. So, oh, and while I've got my green out, got my scrap here. And just make sure you have one nice straight edge on the scrap. And I'm going to take the stamp that says Christmas. And here too, you're going to want to put it into the corner and just hold it there for just a second, just to make sure you get a nice crisp image, just like that. Okay, and I'm going to let that set for just a minute because I want it to cure a little bit. Okay, so I've got this tag and I want to put some string inside the hole. Now, I really, really like this iridescent trim that's in the winter catalog. However, I do feel that it's a little bulky to mail. And I kind of have a thing about that. So I figured out a way to make it more usable. Now, make sure that you do this not around an ink pad. We're going to disassemble it. And once you get it started, it pulls out really, really nicely. And it makes it so it's just a little thinner. It's actually kind of like it feels like it's crocheted a little bit, but it takes a minute. You have to find the right thread. And once you start pulling, it's going to just unknot and pull everything apart. And of course, because I'm on camera, this is not working as well, but we're going to get it because we're determined. It does make a little bit of a mess though. Like I said, if you look at my desk right now, I've got lots of little glittery, iridescent glittery things falling all over. I've got a knot. Let's snip that knot and try again. There we go. Nope. Let's try from the other end, shall we? There's tinsel mixed in here. And so it's, once you find the right string to pull, it's just like a sweater and it pulls and pulls and pulls and pulls. But until you find that right string, they've put it together really well. Do, 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 do. Okay, it's gonna work. It's gonna work. It's gonna work. Where there's a will, there's a way. I'm telling you. I didn't snip anything, don't worry. Not yet, even though I'm tempted to. See, it's pulling apart inside. There we go. There we go. So it kind of unbraided it a little bit more. And so it made it not so dense. That's what I was looking for right there. Okay, so I am going to poke that through my hole, just like that. And I love the iridescent look. I like that white trim and I love this iridescent look. I think it is such a fun, it reminds me of being cold, and I'm from Minnesota, so cold is Christmas, just like the North Pole. Okay, there we go. See, not quite so thick. You can, like I said, you can see I've pulled it apart. So knock off all that little tinsely stuff and get it out of here so that it doesn't get on an ink pad. All right, so now let's adhere this down. Sorry that took so long. Here, let's fussy cut this out first. I'm just going to leave a nice frame around that block, the word Christmas. So it's just nice and even. If you want to trim it off so it's perfectly even, go for it. This is why I didn't fussy cut the Santa in front of you, because I am too fussy to fussy cut. It just gets me every time. Okay, so let's adhere this down. I'm going to bring in some dimensionals, which I have hidden over here. And they gave us a lot of dimensionals this time, but I'm using quite a few because I don't want it to sag down. Okay, and I'm going to put this tag so the Mary is even, like straight, if that makes sense. Okay, and now I'm going to take the Christmas and I'm going to put that down. Sorry, I had fuzzies from my pulling apart. Okay, so Christmas can go right underneath. We're going to put that so it's over to the edge, just like that. And then we're going to take Santa and put him right on there. Isn't he so cute? I love him, and he was really not too difficult to fussy cut out. So just like that. So there's card number 1. A labor of love, right? A little bit of fussy cutting, but not bad. I think it is so stinking cute. I love that designer series paper. I love the little bit of glimmer on there. Perfect. Okay, let's do card number 2. Card number 2 is fairly simple as well. I've got my 2 pieces of 1/8 inch glimmer paper again. I've got a piece of, get that out of there. I've got a piece of Cherry Cobbler, 8.5 by 5.5, scored down the middle at 4 1/4. So just a basic card. I'm going to fold and burnish that. Okay, I have got a piece of basic white, 5.5 by 3, a piece of shaded spruce, 3 1/4 by 5.5, a 1 inch piece by, I believe this is 2 of 2.5 of basic white, the same size piece of just a 1/8 inch bigger, so it's 2 5/8 length. So we're going to mat that, but we're not going to worry so much about the bottom. Okay, so that will go like that. And then a sliver of a piece of the designer series paper, what was left, it is also 2 1/2 long, but we're going to cover all that up with a scrap of Christmas again. So let's get stamping. I've got a piece of background paper, just a piece of grid paper. I want to stamp on my mat again, and I've got my Santa Claus stamp and a black ink pad, which is right here. So I'm just going to stamp a lot of jolly old St. Nicholas. Let's see what I want to do. I want to make him look random, like not too perfect. That's going to get covered up. I'm perfectly okay with that. Okay, so there's those, and now we're going to color them, but I'm going to let him cure for just a minute. So while he's curing, I like to let my ink cure just a smidge when I'm going to color. I just feel better about it. So I've got the little stars, and I've pulled out my Pool Party ink pad. Pool Party is one of those colors I think just goes nicely. Whoopsie-doo, I got a slurber in there. I think it goes nicely with Christmas stuff, and I don't know what makes me think that, but I just think it's a nice pop of color. One more maybe, right? Do I need I don't need another one. I don't want to do another one. Too much is too much. So that is all with the Pool Party ink. All right, so my colors that I'm using are, I don't need the dark. I've got the light petal pink, I have got the dark flirty flamingo, and I have the light cherry cobbler. You could most definitely use the dark cherry cobbler. In fact, let's do that. And this is how I colored the Santa that I cut out also. So we're just gonna go through and color Santa's hats. And I'm going to do this as quickly as I can. Really not too tough to color Mr. Santa Claus here. And I like to like outline them first. I just feel like I can keep in the lines better. And you can't tell because they are Stampin' Blends, you can't really tell that you're doing that. So it's a good trick to, I think I might have drank too much coffee today. I feel shaky. Do you ever get like that? It's not good. And I think this one would be super simple to, this stamp set would be, you could make a lot of Christmas cards with this. I am a true believer that Paper Pumpkin's best stamp sets come out at the holidays. The two, October and November are the two best. And I know the next Paper Pumpkin kit will be, will coordinate with this one, they say, and they are telling us that it's tags. So this one you could also make a lot of tags too. There's actually a stamp in the stamp set, if you haven't looked at it yet, that says deliver to. So that to me is a tag sentiment, right? Okay, so then I'm going to take my Flirty Flamingo and I'm just going to color each one of Santa's noses. And then I put just a little dot of pink on each cheek, just to make that rosy cheek look. And we're going to work fast, and this is not very many spots. So this is why I'm working ahead. If they were more detailed, you would not want to do what I just did, because you won't be able to blend very well. But if you work fast, you will be able to blend very nicely those cheeks in there. So the light petal pink is a nice color for Santa's face if you do not have the skin tones. Otherwise, you can really make some beautiful Santa Clauses. Oops, that one doesn't have rosy cheeks. We'll have to go back and fix that, which we can do. I don't mind him without rosy cheeks, but we're gonna. Okay, so I put my rosy cheeks on there. I'm going to come back in and just blend them in. Who says Santa doesn't wear makeup? Okay, so that's how we are coloring our Santas. Super cute, right? I love that. So I'm going to mat that right on to here. Let's go ahead and do that. And I'm leaving it an 1/8 inch on each side. It looks like I've got an overhang. Uh-oh. Telling you, fussy cutting is not my thing. I'm way too fussy to fussy cut. Okay, so we're going to mount that onto our cherry cobbler. Is that not super sharp? Oh, I love it. I love how it looks. Okay, so we're going to mount this onto our cherry cobbler. Just like that. And now I've got my 2 strips of the white glimmer paper again. So I'm going to bring my Tombow glue back in. Same trick as on the other card, where I'm just going to put a little line of glue right there. And you won't have to watch me fighting with ribbon on this one. Just saying, I'm not putting any ribbon on this card. Do you ever have moments where you're just like, oh, it doesn't want to work with me? That's what my ribbon moment was before. Sorry about that. All right, so there's our white glimmer paper. Doesn't that look sharp? I think it's so fun. And I'm going to let that glue cure. I've got a little overhang on each side there again, but I'm going to let that cure. So what I'm going to do is here again, I'm bringing in my Cherry Cobbler, and this time I'm going to use Early Espresso. You could most certainly use the Shaded Spruce again, but I'm going to use Early Espresso. So let's wipe clean my stamp that says Christmas. That's a well-loved chamois there. Okay, so we're going to bring in our little pieces here. Just the scrap of, or the 2-inch piece, 2.5-inch piece of basic white. I'm going to put Mary on there, and I'm going to canter it a little bit again. Just like that. Close that Cherry Cobbler up, and now I'm going to use the Early Espresso, which is the ink that came with, right? That was the ink spot that came with the Paper Pumpkin kit. So, oh, we're not doing it on there. We're going to do that on a scrap paper. So here again, I'm just going down to the bottom corner, and I'm going as straight as I can, and I'm holding it there. The reason you hold it there is to make sure that that ink settles into the ink paper fibers, and you'll get a nice, a crisper image. So just like that. Sometimes those images like that don't like to stamp so nice, right? That's a trick to get by with that. Oof, I'm full of ink. Okay, so get rid of that. Let's mount up our stuff. So I am going to leave a little edge around each edge of that, just like that. So let's, because what I did is I used a scrap of Cherry Cobbler, and it was not wide enough, and I did not want to cut a whole big piece. So I'm making this work, because that's what we do as paper crafters. Nobody's going to take your card apart to see if you've got it perfectly measured and put together under there. Okay, don't fall into the trap of having to be too perfect, because it takes the fun out of paper crafting. So I am going to, let's use a little bit of glue. I'm going to put my, I'm going to line this up just like this. And I'm lining it up on this side, so it looks like I've got, here again, it looks like I've got the same size paper. But you're not going to see this, so we don't really need to worry about that corner near as much. Nobody is gonna know. So there we go, right? So let's cut this out now that it's dried. Trim this edge off. Don't drink too much coffee before you do your trimming, like somebody I am. Okay, so now we've got our Christmas square. So let's put that, see, we had it, oops, there too. Nobody's gonna know. It's good. Okay, some dimensionals. I'm gonna put quite a few on there because I don't want it to get saggy, right? So there is Mary, and we're going to take Christmas, and I'm going to put that right like that. So now you cannot see that these are, you can't tell that those aren't the same, right? So good. And if you wanted to add some embellishments, some other glitter on here, you totally could. I personally like it like this. I think that it's got enough bling to it. So, all right, there's card number 2. So let's bring in both of them again. There are our 2 cards. And this guy is colored just exactly the same. I think I used light Cherry Cobbler on his hat rather than using the dark Cherry Cobbler. But those are my 2 cards. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Give me a thumbs up in the comments down there, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.